call it to order.
All right, we're going to call to order. Fantastic. My wife is the last one talking still, so which is pretty normal. I really like how Rob did that, you know. He said, let's give a round of applause, but we don't know whether we're giving me a round of applause or we're giving the chocolate a round of applause. But either way, it works, doesn't it? Because they're both going to be good and sweet this morning, so it's awesome. It's great. Hey, I really enjoy coming and chatting with you guys. We do it about once or twice a year. I think we've been now. This is our second or third year in a row. Second year, I think. Anyway, it's great coming out here and just chatting with you guys and just seeing what the Lord's doing in this place. And you know, it doesn't matter. The great thing is, it doesn't matter how big or how small we are in numbers. We're actually joining with the hosts of heaven, right? And so when you think about it, there's literally millions of angels who join with us. I love the fact that if you think about it, that it takes 24 hours for the sun to go around, for us to go around the sun, I should say, just technically correct. But 24 hours in a day, right? That means that every Sunday there is 24 hours of praise and worship happening. Just think about that. We join together as part of a conglomeration of millions of other people, where I think the Fijians are the first to start. They're the earliest on the Greenwich Mean Time, or whatever that is, the GMT. And then all the way through for 24 hours then after that, there is praise and worship happening right around the world. And it's just continuous 24 hours of praise and worship. Isn't that good? I think that's a great thing. I mean, we'll be in tomorrow and the Americans will still be praising and worshipping, so they're always a day behind because we're smarter than them. But you know, they're still praising and worshipping. And so, you know, when we come together, you might sit here and think, well, here we are, we're just in this little country town. But yeah, little country towns are the places that are really, that we're joining in with thousands upon thousands of other people right now in this hour. And that's the dynamic of the universal church, of the incredible church that goes right across all time zones in our world. And so it's always great to be here with you guys. I love Jackie's playing those drums. It's like, you must be the coolest chick on the planet, you know. It's like, who I don't know anywhere else in the church where the pastor is actually playing the drums at church beforehand. I mean, Phil Collins plays and sings, but he doesn't play and pray at the same time. So Jackie, you're one up. It's good. Hey, this morning I just want to have a bit of a chat. Is that okay? We'll just have a casual conversation. But I've got notes. Now, the reason why I've got notes is because if I don't have notes, we'll go well and truly past 12 o'clock when the worship practice is meant to start, and I'll still be going on because I've got so many great things to talk to you about what this church is doing throughout the world. And because I don't know if you realise this, but this church is actually instrumental in reaching tens of thousands of young people in another part of the world called Sri Lanka. And you guys are playing a major role in being able to change and transform a nation. Did you know that? I'm not saying that to hype it up. I'm actually saying that legitimately, that what you guys do as your investment into us actually is changing an entire nation. I'm going to say some things this morning that you just going to have to forgive me for, and I realise that other people are doing lots of work around the world and everything that's happening. And I'm going to say things like, look, it's just easy to be able to feed the poor because you just keep on bringing out porridge, right? You just got to keep on raising funds to feed the poor. I could stick a photo of some starving child in Sri Lanka on there, and I've got hundreds of them, and make us all feel really bad and say, you know, if we just had, you know, $30 a month, we could actually feed this child. You can feed children. But there's something actually really quite strategic that needs to take place where you go from not just feeding, because feeding is important, feeding and clothing, very important. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I'm saying that's important, but there is actually something strategic when a group of people say, you know what, let's take it up a notch. Let's try and teach these kids how to actually manage their own country so that they actually don't need to be fed by external sources anymore and having a handout all the time. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but really the point I want to bring to you today is grace. I think we said that in the communion message, that grace. And sometimes we don't really understand grace, but I want to say that we are actually vessels of grace. We actually carry grace. You know, in Ephesians it says, better use the Bible because I'm a preacher, so in Ephesians it actually says that by grace we've been saved. And some people think that that's kind of like, yeah, well, I'm kind of useless and I needed God to do something, and they sort of confuse mercy and grace a little bit because we think that grace is the opposite of works. But it's not. It's actually that grace, in Ephesians 5 it actually tells us, it says, look, we were actually dead. And I don't know about you, but a dead person really can't do anything, right? They can't plough a field, they can't build a house, they can't do anything. And so Paul says, look, we were as useful as dead. But now, and he's not focusing on the fact that we were in our sin dead, but now we are actually full. And we have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. We have so much potential, so much power, so much energy. We are so empowered because of grace. And the word grace means that we actually, the thing that we cannot do ourselves, somebody else has to do it for us. So we cannot save ourselves. Is that true? Yeah. We actually needed Jesus to come and die on the cross for us. And then we simply say, Jesus, we want to follow you. And he says, I will make a way for you where you can't make it yourself. That is the definition of grace. So this morning, I don't know about you, but I can't play the drums and I can't play the bass. Okay. So by grace, I get to enjoy great worship this morning because somebody else who could do it does that for me, right? And so I think that's why it's always important for us to honour everybody who does things for us. You know, even in church, someone comes in and vacuums, someone comes in and sets things up, someone comes in and does things for us so that we can come and just turn up to church and enjoy church, right? The musicians have to stay behind and practice, so we get to turn up and just enjoy the worship next week. And so that's what grace is. And the reality is that this church is actually a vessel of grace, not just here in the local church, but actually stretching out right into outback Queensland, and then beyond that actually stretching into Sri Lanka. So if you take nothing home this morning, if the only thing you take home, I want you to remember that I am a vessel of grace. All right? Can you just say that for me? I like a bit of feedback, so just say, I'm a vessel of grace.
I'm a vessel of grace.
Awesome. Now this time say it like we're not in a nursing home. Let's say it like we really wasn't about. I am a vessel of grace. All right?
I am a vessel of grace.
The thing that I think at my time in life, because I'm not 16 anymore, and you know hormones aren't racing through my body, and I'm confused with who I am. I'm 53. You know, these days I kind of wake up and I'm, come on, relate with me, right? It's sort of like 53. It's like it's cold this morning and some of my joints are hurting, right? I think the thing that we wrestle with as we get older, and I'm saying this as a 53-year-old guy, so for all the young people here, this is sort of warning you of this is what will happen, is that we're not so much concerned about morals, because our morals and our ethics are set in place, right? It's there, right? And so we have less struggle with our morals because we're not trying to define those like we did when we were teenagers. But I think the struggle we have is between fear and faith. Is that there are things we don't do now because we know it's going to hurt tomorrow, right? Like for instance, I know Rob and I, we'd get up quite easily and we'd play a game of footy, right? Do you play AFL or do you play NRL? You play soccer, don't you?
We prefer soccer.
You prefer real football, right? Real football. Okay, so let's just go with even real football, right? So Rob and I get up, we play. What's in a football round? Is it a match is like 90 minutes long? Is that right?
Yeah, similar.
Something like that. Okay, cool. Let's just go with that. But of all the football codes, it's probably the least damaging to our bodies. But I'm guarantee that we would play a 90-minute game of football and we'd play it well. Like we'd play like as well as the Socceroos, right? But tomorrow morning we would both wake up with lots of pain, knees, backs, arms, the whole thing. And so the question is, hey Rob, do you want to go play soccer? You know, and he'd be like, no, I don't really want to do that. And the reason why Rob is smart enough to say, no, I don't want to do that is because he knows that tomorrow it's going to hurt. Okay? And so that's a great example of just in the natural of what happens when we get older. We start to know the problem of our consequence. But what if Rob woke up tomorrow and he actually felt better than what he did this morning after playing a round of soccer? Oh, maybe we should play soccer, right? And so this is where faith is. So fear is, if I do A, then B is definitely going to happen, even though B may never happen. Okay? And that's fear. But faith is exactly the same thing. If I do A, then maybe C will happen. Well, if we don't step into our faith, we'll often revert back to our fear. So when it comes to God, can I just tell you that we think, I know exactly what's going to happen. If I play a round of soccer today, I'm going to be sore tomorrow. I don't have to even think about it. Okay, so I'm not playing soccer today, that's for sure, because I don't want to be sore tomorrow. But sometimes God comes along and says, hey, how about you just pray? Can I get you to pray for this thing? Oh, if I pray for that, I'm going to have to get up earlier in the morning, and that means that tomorrow I'm going to be tired, and all those kinds of things are going to be a problem for me, so we don't do it. And it's easy for me to convince myself that maybe I shouldn't do that thing that God's nudging me to do, because my age is about reduction in pain rather than being uncomfortable, right? So right now I want to be more comfortable and less uncomfortable. So I do things that help my comfort rather than things that are going to make me uncomfortable. Whereas when I was like 20, like I'd drive the car like I'd stolen it, you know? It's like you know, who cares about the speed limit? Stupid cops don't know what they're doing. These days I'm kind of like, oh, I've had an accident, I know what it's like to be hurt, so I'm going to drive a little bit more sedate. Right? This is what it makes sense. Can I just encourage us that in physical world that makes perfect sense that we understand our consequences, but can I encourage us in a spiritual level that we understand that consequences are not always the same as what we've experienced? Because sometimes God can do some incredible things. And there's stories, countless stories of that. Think of Gideon, for instance. You know, Gideon, God turns up, or an angel turns up and says, "You mighty man of valor," and he goes, "Oh, I don't know about that. You sure? I think I'm the least, I'm the smallest guy. I don't think you really know what you're talking about," you know? And so he doubts God like over and over again, and he doesn't do what God asks him to do simply because he's trying to make 1 + 1 = 2. But with God, 1 + 1 never equals 2, it always equals 3 because he's got a little bit of creativity to make things work. So when God nudges you to pray for us when we're doing our work in Sri Lanka, when God nudges you about maybe, you know, supporting us in some way or another, then can I encourage you, instead of just going, "Oh, I don't know, it didn't work out last time," can I just encourage you to say, let's believe for the impossible to happen, that 1 + 1 is going to equal 3, and that God's going to do something incredible in this situation, because that's the world we live in all the time. And we have seen 1 + 1 = 3 over and over and over and over again. It's been so many times we've seen God just make something out of nothing. And so I want to encourage this one. So let me just share a little bit about what we're doing. I want to say, just define one more word for it. So grace is one word I want to define. The second word I want to define this morning is just support. I want to say this morning is support. Oftentimes when people talk about support, we want to thank you for your support. And I do thank you for your support. But in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. Support is prayer and resources. Okay? It's not just, hey, thanks for sending us some money every month. It's actually, thank you for your prayer. And in this kind of meeting, in this kind of environment, I actually want to focus more on the prayer support that you give us, rather than the, hey, we need more money, because I can tell you right now, we need more money. For some reason, BP doesn't want to receive hugs for their fuel, they actually want money. I don't know why that is, but I tried to hug the attendant and say, "Will this do?" And they said, "No, you've got to pay us money." So we need money to make it work. That's just the bottom line. But let's just get that out of the way to start with. When I'm talking about support, and it really comes down to 50-50. We need prayer and money. But in this morning, I'm not here to say I need more money. Okay? Does that make sense? Even though I do need more money. But I'm not here to get you guys to give me more money. I'm actually saying I actually need more prayer. Because the only way that 1 + 1 = 3 is if God works supernaturally. Okay? And so if the money thing comes, that's great, then BP will be happy. But right now, for me, I'm actually saying I actually need us to join together, our hearts to be connected, more than our wallets. Okay? So, because it's your hearts that make a difference. Because we are facing a spiritual battle in what we do. In everything we do, it's a spiritual battle, and that's the only way that 1 + 1 is ever going to equal 3, is if we actually connect into the spiritual battle that we're facing. And so when I say support, I'm not saying thanks for your money, although thank you. I really do thank you for the finances that you guys have provided. And let me just say, this church is a spearhead church. I don't know if you realise this, but you guys were the first ones to put up your hands and say, "We will support you in what you're doing." So I don't know if you realise that, but that's like a medal first. You know, some people turn up, they are foundational members to this, you know, the MCG, we're foundational members of the MCG or something. You guys are foundational members to what we're doing in the Outback and what we're doing in Sri Lanka. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. And our missions works does appreciate that as well. And so I really want to extend that to you. So when I say the word support, what are we talking about? We're talking mainly about prayer, and thank you for the stuff you've already helped us out with. Is that cool? Yeah. So I love the fact that Jesus' last words were, "Go into all the world and make disciples." You know, he talks about being in Jerusalem, in Judea, and the outermost parts of the world. And we understand that geographically, Jerusalem was like where they were at that time. That was the home base. Judea was kind of like the expanded region beyond. And then the outermost parts of the world, well, obviously they didn't know about Australia at that point, but that's where Jesus was really pointing to. He was pointing to, like, I mean, I think Australia is like the furthest point that you can get. Tasmania or somewhere like that is one of those places that's the furthest point, but it was one of those last places to be discovered. I mean, Europe, they did that ages ago, but Australia is like the youngest country. So when Jesus is saying the outermost parts of the earth, he's saying go beyond where you can see yourself. Go beyond, which is what we hear about. So go beyond just the natural, and for us, go beyond Australia. And so I love the fact that Jesus said that. And then Paul sets up an incredible example for us. He actually shows us, says, well, look, the church just can't keep on. Not everybody in the church can go and do what needs to happen. In fact, Paul's the one who shows us this is what the church did, is they witnessed in their local community. They actually made disciples in the local community where people were actually working together to see their community saved. And so we want to see this community, this lovely town, come to know Jesus. Wouldn't it be great if, in 1906 they had this thing called the Welsh Revival, where they emptied pubs, where pubs actually turned into churches because they didn't sell alcohol anymore because the taste for beer had gone off. Whereas before, alcoholism was at a high. The jails were actually emptied for the first time in hundreds of years. The miners who used to, you've probably heard these stories, but they had miners who'd go down, and the donkeys or the mules that they were using to actually go down into the mines and come back again, the mules actually stopped working because the miners felt so convicted about their swearing and their cursing that they stopped swearing and cursing, but now the mules didn't know how to respond because they were so used to the swearing and cursing, right? And so this is in small towns in Wales. We're not talking about Sydney or Brisbane-sized cities. We're talking about little country towns in Wales. I've been to some of those country towns. They are small. They're smaller than what we've got here. Talk about a one pub town, that's kind of big. And so to empty the jails, to close down pubs, to change the way in which people worked, those were revivals that happened in 1906. So imagine if that kind of revival happened here. Just think about it. It is possible. If it's not possible, what are we doing? You know what I mean? But this is the thing. In Paul's day, that's what they were doing. They were ministering to see evangelism take place. But then they were also, when they'd go on holidays or when they'd go to, they'd head on off to Brisbane, they'd take their donkey and their cart and they'd go off to Brisbane and sell their things. Well, they'd actually witness and evangelize there as well. So that's their Judea, right? But then their outermost parts of the earth, we read that Paul actually says, look, not everyone can go to the outermost parts of the world, so I want to thank you for sending me, which is what Paul said. Paul says in all of his letters, he actually has a little bit at the end, oh, by the way, thank you for the gift, thank you for the wonderful support you've given to me, and thank you for the people that came and helped us to plant this church, and thank you for the finances that came and helped us with that, and helped us with this, and all that kind of stuff. Now at the same time, sometimes Paul had to go and work as a tent maker and things like that to help support him, but when he had support from churches, it was much more effective. And so I want to thank you, just like Paul did, and just say that it's a tradition that was started off way back in the New Testament times, where churches who said, well, I don't really want to go to India and get deli belly for 2 weeks. Who wants that? Yay. But if you want to go, Greg, you want to go to Sri Lanka and eat curry for 2 weeks? Okay, cool, off you go. And that's what you guys are doing to actually make that change. So I want to thank you for that church pattern. We are an organisation, oh, there's no slide, but I thought I saw a slide before, but we are actually running a ministry called Hand to Plough. And the reason why we're called Hand to Plough is because we decided that it wasn't enough to look at a field and go, one day there'll be a good harvest there. We're talking about souls for the kingdom. But somebody's actually got to put their hand to the plough and actually plough the ground to make it happen. And my favourite story in the Bible, of all the stories that there are, believe it or not, is actually the one where Elijah finds Elisha and he's ploughing the ground. Now, you've got to understand this. When we see people ploughing with cattle over in Sri Lanka, they usually got one cow or one ox that they're ploughing with. The Bible says that Elisha had 12 pairs of oxen. And we missed the point that why do you need 12 pairs of oxen? So 24 ox. Why do you need 24 ox to be able to plough a ground? Well, it's because the ground is hard. Okay? If it's easy, you just have one cow. If it's hard, you might have 2 or 3. He's got 24. So that shows you how hard it is. And that's where God said, if this guy wants to actually have the faith to believe that that hard ground is going to bring about a harvest, then that's the guy I want to use. And I want to really encourage you with this, that some of the places we're ploughing is actually pretty hard, like really hard. And that's why one of our projects is actually called 24 Ox. Nobody gets it because nobody sort of realises that we're actually really biblical. And it's like we are ploughing some hard ground. And let me just tell you, you guys form an incredible part of that 24 Ox team where we actually get to plough some pretty hard ground. One of the hard grounds we're ploughing at the moment is actually central Queensland. I don't want to give you all the really sad statistics, but we do have in Queensland 2 suicides every day that happens, and most of those happen out in central Queensland amongst miners and farmers. It's a hard ground to plough because there's such an incredible Oh, that's us. Look, crazy people. Because there's so much stigma around mental health, and we're kind of getting better as a nation talking about mental health, but it's kind of this hippie, airy-fairy kind of mental health they're talking about because they don't have the gospel weaved into it. And really, the only way that, honestly, I've done mental health. I'm a counsellor by trade, done theology as well, but leaving the gospel out of your mental health is like trying to run your car without petrol. And really, that's what they're trying to do. They're pushing this big thing called mental health. It's like, if you just put a little bit of fuel in it, guys, it'll actually go by itself. But instead, they go, no, we've got to do it by ourselves. And this is where they don't understand grace, right? So we do. So we're ploughing some ground and we're making connections out at Central Queensland. You guys are forming a part of that as part of your giving and your support. But we need your prayer because it is a spiritual thing that's happening. As the churches have reduced their resources in the outback, we've seen an increase in suicide and sexual abuse amongst children. So nationwide, it's 1 in 4 children are being sexually abused. Out in the outback, it's kind of almost getting to 1 in 3. So if you go into some really, really isolated communities, it's actually every second child, so it's 1 in 2. So that's where the discrepancy is. So the further away you get from big city areas or the coast, the more that pressure is. And all of that is a stimulation or an indication, say, of the stimulation of poor mental health, because there's no spirit to support the emotions, right? So we're made of body, soul and spirit, and there's nothing there. We're dead. So we need Jesus in the equation. So when you guys help in your support, it actually helps us to be able to do that. But it is ploughing some ground. And we're also doing some planting as well, spiritual planting. We've made some great contacts in Longreach, Mount Isa, Roma, Townsville of all places. And we are also seeing some places in Rocky. So we're kind of, if you look at the map, Emerald is right in the middle of well, as best you can, in the middle of Queensland. And so it's actually, I think it's a 10-hour drive for us to get to Mount Isa. It's a 6-hour drive to Longreach. It's a 3-hour drive to Rocky. It's a 4-hour drive to Roma. So that's sort of, we're kind of in a good spot, 7 to towns, yeah. So we're kind of in a good spot to reach wherever they call us, we can get to within a day. So that's good. Whereas if we're living down here in Brisbane, we'd be closer to these amazing people, but it takes us longer to get to Mount Isa and places like that. So that's why we're doing itinerant mission work in that area. But let me just focus, because I've only got another 2 hours to go. So I haven't got enough time to get everything in. But let me just focus on what we're doing in Sri Lanka, because this is the place where we've been in Sri Lanka now for 2011 was when we first went. So you do the maths, because my maths is not working right now. I need another cup of coffee for that to work. 15 years? Yeah, 15 years. So we've been in Sri Lanka now for 15 years. So we've been ploughing and planting for 15 years. And the reason why I want to share on this is because I want you to see if you can prophetically think about that we've been there for 15 years. We did the same thing we're doing, or similar kind of hard yard ploughing now in central Queensland. Well, we did that 15 years ago, and we've been doing it for 15 years in Sri Lanka. So now we're seeing a harvest in Sri Lanka, and we're seeing some incredible things take place. And that excites me, because when I look back and go, gee, it was actually harder in Sri Lanka, because not only did we have all these social problems, but we also had language problems as well. So we're trying to communicate. They don't speak English and we don't speak Sinhalese. So we still don't speak Sinhalese. I don't know, I'm just dumb. So I look back and go, look at all the ground that we ploughed back then, and now we're seeing a harvest. So if I can actually excite you with what's happened in the last 15 years, not that I'm going to go for the full 15 years for you, Rob, okay, because otherwise we will be here for 3 hours. But if I can say, look, 15 years ago we started the same journey we did in central Queensland, in Sri Lanka, and now this is what's happening in Sri Lanka. I hope that excites you enough to go prophetically, this is what could happen in maybe 5, 10, 15 years in Australia, because we don't have the same kind of barriers. So this is exciting for me to give this kind of testimony. And again, you guys are an integral part of this. You guys play a part of this because you support us with your finances, but you also, I'm believing that you guys, when you get together and pray, we're on that prayer list. We better be on that prayer list. Rob, we better be on the prayer list, okay? Who's your prayer partner? Who's your prayer leader here? Is it you or Jackie?
Graham is a key player.
Come on, Graham. Make sure we're on the prayer list, okay? You should have us on the first, and then about 20 minutes later praying for us again, and then another 20, at least 3 times a prayer meeting. We want that up there. That'd be great. So let me just share a couple of things that you guys are investing into with your support.
Yes.
So first of all, so at the moment we've got 5 programs running. So I'm going to be really quick on these 5. I'm going to machine gun them out so that I give them to you all. But these 5 programs, they cost us about $8,000 each program. So that's kind of our budget that we're working towards. And I work in a hospital, and my wife works in a landscaping business. We do that because honestly, we have to pay for fuel costs and insurance costs, and we have to pay for flights to get over to Sri Lanka and stuff like that. So we do that ourselves. What you guys are paying for, what your investment is, not only in prayer but also in finances, is actually on the ground stuff. We don't use that money for our person. That doesn't come to us in any way, shape or form. We're investing more than what Hand to Plough can possibly even give back to us. So we just went, you know what? We'll cover those costs, and any support that we get from churches goes directly to the mission field. It goes where the plough's hitting the dirt. Is that cool? So let me give you these 5. So first of all, we've got a widow that we're trying to help out over in Sri Lanka, and there's 2 things that are covering our $8,000 here. Is we've just finished supporting them to build a community kitchen in a church, where and it really is really basic. If you can think about it, it's a kerosene fire, or an oven or a stove, whatever you want to call that, and they're boiling big vats of rice. So if you can imagine, this is probably a small. If this table here was a pot, that's a small pot for them. So their rice pots are about twice that size. And they're cooking a whole heap of rice and stuff like that. Now, about 3 times a year, they have flooding that happens in Sri Lanka, and they're so poor that they don't have any option to be able to go and say, you know what, let's just build somewhere else. They are actually so poor, it's like, this is the only place we can afford to live, and whenever there's rain, we've got to pack everything up and move out. It's all got to fit into a car, or in their case, a tuk-tuk, a 3-wheeler. It's all got to fit in there so we can get out before the floods come. The floods come, wash everything away, and then they've got to go back in, clean out the cement structure. I won't call it a house because it's not really a house. The cement structure, and start all over again. And they just don't have the money to live somewhere else. It's just not possible for them to do that. I know that seems weird to us, but it's legitimately that's where we're at as far as a developing country goes. So we've enabled the local church there to be able to have a community kitchen where about 2 or 3 times a year they'll actually have to cook for large numbers of widows and orphans who live in these houses that they can't live anywhere else. So that's one of the things that you guys are doing, is actually helping to support us with that. We've actually got a little project that's running as part of that one, which is trying to help out a widow that we've got. I think I may have shown some photos of that in our last video. If not, I'll send you another one, where they're living in a home, but the grandmother, let's start with the eldest one. So the grandmother, she's fine, but her daughter has epilepsy, and her grandchildren have epilepsy, so that the grandmother's husband has passed away. The daughter's husband is an alcoholic who's just left home because his gambling debts were so high, and he's disappeared. They don't know where he's gone. So they have no recourse of action. The grandmother's like super old, like 97 or something like that. Like, nobody here's 97. Didn't offend anyone just then. Okay, I'm 53. Okay, just so you know. But 97, and so she can't go out and do the manual labour that's required to cause an income. Okay, so they're living off what we would classify as maybe $15 a month, which is just enough for them to buy a bag of rice. And the bag of rice, which would normally, a portion of rice that would normally feed one Sri Lankan, which would probably be we probably have twice as much as what they would eat, but they divide that by 3 just to make it work. But one of the things that's really sad is they're in a community where, because they're Christians, all of the Buddhists and the Hindus have actually rejected them, and so they're the only Christians that are in that little village, and their roof has actually got holes in it, so when it rains they have to get all their sheets, and they put all their sheets up, so they've got 5 sheets that doesn't stop the rain, but it gives the water somewhere to go, so it hits the sheet, and it doesn't hit hard enough that it actually wets them a lot, but obviously the baby does get pneumonia and stuff like that. So added to all of that is the fact that their medicine costs them, I think for us it would cost us about $90 a week. So the medicine they need to stop the epilepsy and stuff like that, it's not happening. So number one, we're praying that A, they get healed. But number two, practically speaking, there is people in the church who are donating bags of rice for them every now and again, as much as they can, but their roof really needs to be fixed. So part of our first project is not only the community kitchen, but also to get this widow's roof fixed so they're not getting cold and wet all the time. So that's our first project that you guys, and again, this is not me asking for more staff, I'm just simply saying you guys are a part of that. And so that's really important. We also have our chicken farms. We've got 5 chicken farms that are running at the moment. What we do is we actually, you could call them micro loans, but we actually, there's no way for them to ever pay it back, so we just donate the money for them to buy enough chickens that they can actually provide eggs for themselves, and then any eggs that are left over, they then can sell them on the street, which actually creates an income for them. Now you've got to remember that the average income of the area that we're working in, the average income of a tea plantation person, so think about this next time you have your cup of tea, is that a tea plantation worker is living off $5 a day. That's their pay. So now before you go, oh yeah, but the rice is cheap. No, an average meal costs about $1.20. So for one meal, which is really plain, it's a plate of rice, it's dal. What's dal? It's not chickpeas. It's lentils. Lentils. That's what I'm looking for. So they have dal, and then maybe if they're lucky, they'll go down and they'll find some some wild spinach, and they'll put that on their plate. And then if it's a really special occasion, they'll have maybe a leg of sort of semi-grown chicken, because they're not big like drumsticks or anything like that. It's just this little bit of chicken. And you can talk to Dan more about it. He'll tell you about some of the food they eat over there and that sort of stuff. But that costs about $1.20 to put together. And so $5 a day. Think about it, you've got a mum and a dad, 2 kids, and $5 a day generally means that that all that money gets spent on food. So just to survive. Then what happens is mum will go to work, and the $5 she gets per day will pay for their trips on the bus that they need to go to the hospital, go to doctors, it pays for clothes, all that kind of stuff. And again, it's not like, oh well, clothes must be cheap. No, they actually fly, when our friends fly from Sri Lanka to here, they buy all their clothes here because it's so cheap here. And that's pretty amazing. When we go, we take clothes with us. So that just gives you some sort of idea. So a chicken farm where they're actually selling eggs, you might think, well, that's not a big deal, but it's actually enough for them to get at least $5 a day, which means that they're actually getting medium income. So that's really cool. They sell the eggs for about 20 cents an egg. But one lady, she's actually a very smart lady, just needed the help to be able to get things going. She started selling her eggs as premium free-range chicken eggs, which meant she could sell her eggs for 60 cents instead of 20 cents. And so she's making 3 times as much just because she doesn't have the chickens in a coop where they're getting force-fed food to produce more eggs. She's like, no, these eggs are all natural. They're in a big paddock that they actually, paddock, about the size of this church kind of thing, and there's all these chickens roaming around. So she has to go and collect all the eggs. She sells them for 60 cents rather than 20 cents. So she's smart. Because jungle space they've got. So we've got chicken farms that you guys are investing in. We also have this incredible thing, youth camps. And the youth camps over there are so dynamic and so crazy different to what we've got here. But let me just, because this is going to feed into our 4th project we've got, which is leadership. Last year when we did our youth camp, we couldn't go this year, by the way, because the fuel crisis thing hit. And while I could get over there, it was going to cost a little bit more money to get there on the flights. They actually have no money in the country, and so they had no reserves on fuel. And so therefore they had no fuel at all. So my question wasn't, hey, can we get there? The question was, if we get there, can the kids get to the camp that we want to run? And even running a camp that was like 10 kilometres away, well, for some kids that's actually, for them to get there, the network, I won't go into the whole details, but it takes about 3 hours to get to the camp. Even though it doesn't seem like it's that far away, it's actually a long way away. And the bus fares were enough, with the fuel prices, they were jumping that up. But they just came to a point where the bus fares were jumping up, and then there were buses that stopped running because they didn't have any fuel to run them. So they just pulled over on the side of the road and said, this is where we stop. That's it, until we can go get some more fuel. So we didn't get to do a youth camp this year, but last year we did a youth camp. Now, this is a really cool things that you guys are investing. I get excited about this because there was some big name ministries that were going in and doing some big name stuff. Just leave the names out, but let's just say they had plenty of resources behind them. And for the last 7 years, they've been doing their thing and doing it all big shabam and wazam and all that kind of stuff. They had, in the 7 years, they had an average of 3 people join their leadership program and go to Bible college out of that wham bam, thousands of dollars being spent. And this is where I want to say you guys are making a great investment in your prayer and in your finances. This is a great investment because we've been going in there and we said we're not going to do it that way, we're going to do it very differently. We're going to do it the way that a local church in Australia, like Trax Church, would actually do. If we wanted it, this is how we do it. Our last camp last year, we had 70 young people, 70 young people commit themselves to full-time ministry. Now that is a consistent, we average about 50 people commit themselves to full-time ministry, which means they are going to go, they leave their home, they leave their jobs, they actually go and they volunteer, they sign up for Bible college in Sydney, our version of Sydney, and they give themselves a year in that community so that they can then go work for the church, and again, for nothing, literally living off whatever they are blessed with. So if they go and work for a church, all they get is a plate of rice every day with some dal, and maybe, just maybe, someone will give them some clothes. Or maybe so that's why we take clothes with us. It's because of these youth kids who don't have anything. They're living wholly and solely reliant upon the church. So when they say who wants to commit themselves to ministry, it's not an intern program. It's not a Bible college program that mum and dad send you off to and you get fed 3 times a day. And no. This is like you are sacrificing everything and totally trusting in God to be able to provide for every single one of your needs. And God does, don't get me wrong, God does. It's not destitute, they're not, and churches, they rally around them, it takes the whole 100 people in the church to actually just feed that one person enough to keep them alive. And the pastors look after them as if they were their own children. They do, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to give you some sad story like it's all problems. But I want to show you the commitment level they've got, that when those 70 people raised their hands, they weren't raising their hands to go live at a resort for a year. They were raising their hands knowing the sacrifice that was going to take place. And so we had 70. That just compare that to the big Razzmatazz one, that they had 3 a year for 7 years. What's that, 21 people? We had 3 times that much in one camp. You guys are investing in a life-changing, radically moulding, shaping discipleship program that you don't even know is happening. And 70 young people. Now that's 70 young people. I look back over the last 14 years. We have got youth pastors in place, church planters in place. We've got businessmen who are leading in Christian environments rather than Buddhist environments. And that's a big deal. You guys have been a part of that in the last 18 months. You guys have been a part of actually radically changing all of that, which has led to our leadership program. So the national, we used to be called Assemblies of God. Who remembers when we used to be called Assemblies of God? Yep. Now we're the ACC, right? So this is Trax Church, a member of the ACC. Well, over there they didn't change their name. They're still called the Assemblies of God. So the national Pentecostal body called the Assemblies of God in Sri Lanka came to us and said, we like what you're doing because you get people to actually commit themselves to ministry rather than commit themselves to a resort. You're committing themselves to full-on life-changing ministry. Would you help us to develop a leadership program? So for the last year, we have seen over, so they've had 12 meetings. At every meeting, I won't say it's the same because sometimes it changes, but for every single one of those meetings, they've had at least 70 people from a district. So they've broken the district up into 12 districts, and everybody from those 12 districts comes into a centralised meeting. They do our training. They then go back to their district and they teach what they learned to all of their committee members. So we have 70 to 100 people turn up each meeting, and then they go back and they teach another 100 people themselves about this is how you actually change the church. This is how we actually run church the way we need to run it. And so you guys are a part of that. I'm getting excited about it. I don't know if you guys get excited, but this is something you guys are investing in. So the reason why I'm saying we need to be prayed for 3 times in a prayer meeting is because that when we are there, we need your prayers to make that happen. And your investment in that prayer time is actually huge for us. Because I don't want to get all spooky on you, but we are battling against principalities and powers. I mean, this is a Buddhist-run country. India has already chucked Compassion, World Vision, all those Christian organisations. They've all been kicked out because of the Buddhism principality that's there. We're in Sri Lanka and they haven't kicked us out yet, but I tell you what, there may come a day. But when that day happens, you need to know that for the last 10 years, we have been investing in developing and growing young people, and you guys have partnered in with us on this, that now we have, even if all the Westerners were to pull out tomorrow, there is such a strong church there, they wouldn't be able to stop it. Okay? And that's because you guys have been investing in prayer and your support for us. And so I want to encourage you with this, that you guys are making a change to a nation. Okay? And so the National Assemblies of God and even the other Pentecostal denominations are now jumping on board and they're saying, hey, we like what you're doing, can you come and do that with us as well? So, yeah, and the good thing is, because we've been doing it for 11 years, I'm not actually running it. I send them the material, and we've got our Sri Lankan son that's over there, and he's so, not even well trained, but he's so empowered and anointed by God. And that's the thing, we don't just get a guy who's trained, we get a guy who's anointed. And he's been so anointed by God, he's the youngest pastor in all of Sri Lanka, with a church of about 300 people. But he's also saying, hey, we've got this stuff. And I don't know whether he says he gets it or whether he tells people that some dumb Australian got it. But I think he says he got it because he's got more swing than I do, right? He's like the president of, he's not the president. I used to say that he's the Guy Sebastian of the churches in Australia. Can I put it that way? It's like, oh my goodness, he's coming to our church. So this is all because we've been investing in with him for over 15 years. Okay, and so and it's not about he's a superstar. He's just anointed. And so I send him the material and I say, here you go. And when they ask him who does it, and they go, oh, we have a special doctor from Australia who's got a master in theology who comes and does this for us. And they go, great, but then he uses our Australian style of doing things. And Dan, again, you need to ask Dan, because Dan's been there, where we do all these silly games and do all these things and make them do all stuff and break them out of their comfort zone so that they then receive what we need to have, and it clicks, and they become incredible leaders in their community. And so you guys are a part of that, and that's so exciting for me. And so that's the leadership style of things that we're doing. And then, I'm turning my mic off, so it must be time to finish. But let me finish with this one. The last step that we've just launched into now is we've realised that it's great that there are organisations who are feeding the poor and who are clothing the poor, but we also recognise that it's a bit circular. Does that make sense? And that's not to say we want anybody to stop doing that. We just went, there's plenty of people doing that. There's Compassion there, there's World Vision there, cheering them on. Yeah, you guys are awesome, keep doing that. And then there's other organisations that are doing church planting and raising up pastors to plant more churches and all that kind of stuff. That's great. Where's our niche? Where do we sit? And so when we were praying about this about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we said, God, where do we sit? And God started to open doors for us. And we actually had opportunity for us to actually go and talk to the Minister of Defence and the Minister of Education. That was a bit of a treat. And you turned up there because they're all civil war and everything's still happening. So we were driving the fastest I've ever driven. And with 2 police motorbikes in front of us, 3 a police car behind us, another 2 motorbikes, all lights going flashy flash. We're driving through because, anyway, bulletproof car. That was fun. Driving through, and we go to this guy's place, and we go in, and then you notice that the guy who's serving you coffee, he's got an automatic weapon tucked in underneath his jacket. These are all Secret Service, and he's the butler. And the maid, well, I don't know where she's carrying a gun, but I knew she had one on her somewhere. I walked outside, and we kind of finished the meeting a little bit early, and I walked outside, and there was literally maybe 200 guys standing outside, all fully armed, fully decked out. I walked out, I was the first one to walk out. I walked out, I saw them all there, and I stood there, and they all looked at me, and I looked at them, and I turned around and went, am I in the right place? Because I thought maybe I'd stepped into the wrong area. I turned around, turned back again, they were gone. They just into the darkness. Interesting experience, but we had an opportunity to pray with the Minister of Defence. We got a chance to pray with some of the ministers that were there. What we realised is that there is so much corruption that's happening. I mean, they've already had the President and the Prime Minister a couple of years ago. They took off with $2 million American dollars each, which is a lot of money when you've only got $4 million American dollars in the Reserve Bank. So they pilfered everything. And they went away and came back again only because they were able to make some shady deals with their friends and the way the Constitution said. Anyway, long story, there's a lot of corruption that's happening. And now we are seeing, the devastating for me is such beautiful people have been basically put in chains by prostitution, drugs and alcohol. There is more brothels there than I've ever seen in the last, the increase in brothels in the last 3 years has been incredible. The illicit amount of drugs that have taken place, because there was people in Parliament who were actually the drug dealers. Like they were the Sri Lankan mafia, put it that way. You know, they were actually, and they've been convicted of those things, and yet they are in politics. And the incredible thing is that these guys actually get voted back in. Okay, the reason why they get voted back in is because of ignorance. Because you have a bunch of people who are trying to survive on $5 a day, when half of those wages go towards just putting a plate of one plate of food on the table, the other half is to put clothes on their back. They don't have time to think about where the politics of the nation are going. And this guy comes along and gives us all a lollipop. Maybe he's the guy we should vote for. Right? So they're not thinking about, like, we're very politically aware, not as much as the Americans are, but we're definitely very politically aware. Like, we all know what's going on, and let's not make any comments from the pulpit about that, but we all are aware of what's going on. We all have an opinion on whether we're orange, red or blue, right? You know, that's all happening, and that's cool, but these guys have no idea. So when a guy comes along and says, when you vote, vote for me, and not literally hands them a lollipop, but gives them a little gift, they go, oh, he's the one to vote for, and he gets in. So we realise prophetically that after talking with these ministers and seeing this pattern emerging in the politics, that the way in which we're going to help these people, not only spiritually have them know Jesus, but also physically, the way they need help is actually be more educated in what they do. So the last project that we've got running at the moment, which we're planning on running for the next 5 years, is we're trying to get education centres up and running that will actually have a very strong Christian base. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it actually empowers churches, because pastors are, the tithes and offerings, by the way, Rob, in Sri Lanka is sometimes chickens and rice. So we've been there and they've actually come up and there's this chicken, but they put it in a box. And they've got a box for it. It happens so often they've got a box for the chicken, right? So that's the tithes and offerings for the month. That's it. So, it's not too bad, but it's for a month, so you've got to make the chicken last the whole time. Bags of rice and things like that. So what we're also trying to do is empower pastors not to be like, because in that kind of poverty, you kind of become like, hey guys, I need your money. I need your money. You know, your mindset becomes like that. It's like, if you guys aren't tithing, I'm dying. You know, and so we want to break that kind of mentality. And the way we do that is by empowering pastors with the ability to become essentially business people. And one of the things that's really big in Sri Lanka is tutoring and education. They're trying to get their kids educated. They're trying to get that happening. We have people that will, you know, church people in particular, especially the Christians, because they're kind of, Christians are breakthrough people in these kind of environments. You know, the Hindus are kind of like, yeah, we just like to leave things the way they are. Buddhists like tradition. And so they just like things stuck in their old ways. Whereas the Pentecostal Christians in particular, because we won't talk about other denominations, but the Pentecostal Christians in particular, they're the ones who are saying, oh, you come from this culture and you come from that culture and you love each other, great. I think it's great, mate, let's get married. Whereas the Hindus and the Buddhists are kind of like going, no, you don't come from a Hindu background and you don't come from, you know, you do, so you guys shouldn't be together. This is actually, you know, so that racial divide is really big over there. But the Pentecostal Christians are like, hey, love is God's love is what we need. So let's just come on. Let's shut down the cultural divides and actually start to work towards these things. So the Christians are giving up bare necessities to be able to send their kids to greater education. Now we've done this actually when Liz and Dan were in our church. We started off this little project called Project Grace, and I don't have time really. I don't. To have to talk about Project Grace because it was an amazing thing, but it was like God opened up a door for us to show us the potential. I got to tell you this, Jackie. We gave them enough money one time. It was actually when Liz was in charge of it, and we'd organised. We said, look, we can actually do. I think we can do like uniforms, bags, shoes, underwear for girls. That was like girls weren't going to school because they couldn't afford underwear. Teenage girls, teenage boys. You can understand the dynamic that's happening there. The boys are teasing, the girls are embarrassed, right? So we're like, okay, well we can do that. We can do underwear for girls. That's fine. So we got all that together and we went, look, it's going to cost the shoebox thing that was happening at the time. That cost about. We worked it all out. That cost about $60 to land in Sri Lanka. So we said we could do that whole school uniform thing for $50. So we raised enough for 50 uniforms. 50 school packs, and to give that to the poorest people we've got. And so at the end of that year, I said, I did a report to come back, and they said to us, this Pastor, we're 3 short. And I went, well, that's not too bad. 47 out of 50, that's all right. Okay, I was hoping we get the full 50, but 47's all you could afford, that's fine. Well, what happened was that it wasn't 3 short, it was 3 short of 200. Because they decided, they worked it out. If we buy the uniforms, sure, we can buy them, and we can buy 50 of them, and it'll work. But if we buy the cloth and employ the widows in the church, not only do we pay the widows in the church, but we can actually make 200 of them. And then they inspired a whole group of people and they said, listen, would you give up 1 day's worth of meals, so $5, would you give up $5 and fast and pray that we would have an impact in our schools so that we could actually get these school uniforms done? And they raised enough money to not only have the uniforms we had, but also had books. And on the little books, this is the really cool thing, Jackie, I love this. On the books, they had this, on the front it's like my maths book, all kids stuff. On the back it said, proudly given to you by Bible believers from Ratnapura, and here's the gospel message. And so these kids are walking around with the gospel message, and as they learn English, guess what? They learned the gospel message as they learned English. It was so cool. 200 young people, they invested themselves. They got inspired by our measly 50 uniforms and turned that into 200. And so we are really excited about trying to help an entrepreneurial spirit that's there to be able to bring the gospel so that they're not relying upon the chicken that comes in for tithes, but actually rely upon their prowess. And we're going to do that by actually providing, it's a double-edged sword. So money for the pastor, but also it's going to be education for the kids. So they do tutorials. And they charge 100 rupees is the going rate. And when we were there, we were actually able to sponsor kids where they could get a tutoring every single day, and it cost us like $350 a year for a child to go to. And we had kids who went from bottom of the class, this guy's, forgive me, but he's a dummy and he's never going to go anywhere, he's an idiot. That's the words that teachers were using, and the parents, and the grandparents. And we took them to top of the class, now being sponsored to go to this special international private, sponsored by someone else to go to this private international school. And so that's the difference that you guys are making, that we are about to change and transform in that nation. So I'm really excited about the press support you guys give us and the financial support you give us is actually making a significant difference in changing an entire nation. Okay, maybe I'm the only one excited about that, but I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, go! Yeah. It's almost like a Tony Robbins thing, isn't it? But I mean, that should excite you. You should sleep well tonight to know that your investment you're making in us, in your support for us, is actually changing a nation. And I don't say that half-hearted. We've got proof that it's actually changing a nation. I'm not saying that just to rile you up and just I am actually saying that because it really is happening. So, in saying all that, thank you for your grace, because your grace is empowering people to do something they couldn't do themselves. Your support and your prayer. These kids don't know how to pray for themselves because they've been brought up in a Buddhist world. But your intercession for them actually is changing their life. You are providing something they cannot do themselves. And it's no small thing. Because the Bible says that every time one of those kids, one of those youth, one of those older people, one of those parents, every time one of them turns their heart towards Jesus, all of heaven celebrates. And we are seeing hundreds. And it's a lifelong discipleship journey. Sometimes we get the 70 who say, yes, we want to join, and maybe the 70 over 10 years turns into 7, but those 7 are now pastors and youth pastors and planters and church planters and assistant business people, and they're making a significant difference in the world. So I say all that to say, thank you. Sharon and I are humbled by the fact that you would join us as our first foundational supporters, and that you would help us to be able to change this nation. And you don't get to see it like we do, but it's happening. So thank you very much. Can I pray? Do you mind if I pray? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Hey, listen, when we pray, we're actually praying to King Jesus. So do you mind if we just stand in the place? I know it's not really like an altar call kind of prayer, but we're going to pray and just give thanks. Is that okay? Because that's where I'm at. You guys can do the altar call pastoral thing after that, okay? Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your grace. We thank you, Jesus, that you've been teaching us grace all along, because it is by your grace that we are saved. And so we thank you that we can become vessels. And Lord, I pray that this church would know the abundance, the multiplication of grace. That it wouldn't just be something that we keep in the dam of our heart, but rather a flow that happens like a river. And may that river never ever run out. I pray, Lord God, that you bless every single person in this place with an understanding and an extension of grace, so that they may then be grace to somebody else. Lord, I thank you, because that's the way you work. You teach us so that we can give to others. So I pray right now for blessings over this church, for the support they've given to us. May there be increased blessing in their life, so that we may give you all the glory and all the praise, and that we would honour you with everything we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.